Hello, welcome to Cook with Meg. My name is Meg and we are in the kitchen with our dear friends at the Egg Farmers of New Brunswick, and we are getting ready to start the new year off fresh, on a budget, being mindful of using things we already have and not breaking the bank on delicious foods. So for the next few months, we're talking bites on a budget, and today we're putting that focus on sheet pan brekkie burritos. I mean brekkie, but it really could be for any time of the day who wants to make some burritos. So we're focusing on affordability and how awesome the beautiful star of the show is our eggs. We're starting with 10 eggs. So we wanted to do for the next couple of videos and maybe the next couple of months, put a real focus on how do we do bites on a budget? How do we not break the bank but make amazing food? And I got thinking, what if we made a sheet pan size amount of eggy goodness that could be transformed into egg sandwiches, breakfast sandwiches, burritos, etc., etc. So we're going to show you today how to customize the base and then get it into the oven on a sheet pan. You heard me correctly. Then we're going to cut it with a pizza cutter, and then we are going to form it into either burritos or egg sammies. So are you ready? Let's cook. Okay, here we go. We are starting off our recipe. We're calling them sheet pan brekkie burritos. It's like it was planned, but it wasn't. That's my oven doing its little sing-song to tell me that it's up to temperature. So if you're doing the Cook with Meg with me, maybe you've got your recipe printed, maybe it's on a tablet, you will see me glancing at it. That is our roadmap. And in any Cook with Meg class, we use our recipe. So we tell you what you need for tools, and today's tools are pretty limited. We don't need very many, but I do have a big baking sheet, standard size, and I've got a couple of pieces of parchment paper, and that's actually where we are going to house our omelet that gets baked in the oven and then portioned out into either tortillas or English muffins or bread for Sammys. So we're gonna start with the base, and of course, the star of said show would be our eggs. I've got a 4-cup Pyrex. I like to use a measuring cup that I can pour from. I find sometimes bowls, they don't always work. They kind of spill, but again, use what you have. And 10 eggs. And for today's recipe, when a recipe calls for eggs, that's usually implied that we want a large egg. So we are gonna just start cracking our eggs down into our Pyrex. You can live on the edge and crack them directly into said bowl, or I do usually crack the first one that way, but then I switch to a tiny bowl, and that's my guarantee that if I get any shells, wow, it's way easier to pluck them out of a bowl, a tiny bowl, as opposed to the big bowl. I also always am pretty mindful to measure out my ingredients, and in this case, 10 eggs first, so that as I'm talking and chatting, or maybe you're in your kitchen and the kids are helping, you're not losing track of how many eggs you need. We need 10. So 10 large eggs. I was about to put the whole bowl in, just the egg. We are using a combination of brown eggs and white eggs, and that is my way to show you that you absolutely can use whatever eggs you have on hand. The only difference is the color of the bird. It doesn't change the egg between a brown or a white. Now, I always encourage, we call it clean as we go at Cook with Meg. And that means if you have a spill, we take a minute, we wipe up the spill. If we have to wipe our hands, we take a moment, we wipe up our hands. We really like to stay nice and clean in the kitchen, and it's a great practice to get into, especially if you are cooking with kids and teens. It teaches them to respect the workspace. So I have a whisk, and this is the fun part. We're gonna just give a little poke here to all of these yolks. my dog, as if on cue, Oliver. If you've watched our Cook with Meg videos with the Egg Farmers of New Brunswick, you'll know that he often joins in the kitchen. He is definitely the kitchen puppy. He knows there is bacon, he knows there is cheese, he's all in. So if you don't have a measuring cup that would be for 4 cups worth, definitely do this in a bowl. But the goal here is just to sort of scramble or aerate or whisk those eggs to combine the albumin, which is the protein, and the yolk, which is the yolk, the yellow, delicious sunshine. We call that liquid gold. And for those who are brand new to Cook with Meg, welcome. I'm really excited to be cooking with you. I partnered with the Egg Farmers of New Brunswick. Now, I live in Red Deer, Alberta, but I'm from New Brunswick. I am a New Brunswicker, and my whole family's in Fredericton. So my family's in Fredericton. My dad grew up in Petitcodiac. My mom's family grew up in Florenceville, New Brunswick. We were a horse family, farming family. So New Brunswick, I'm a New Brunswicker for sure. But I live in Alberta with my family. But I could not be more excited to work with the Egg Farmers in New Brunswick. So snaps to all the farmers who make up the Egg Farmers of New Brunswick and who work tirelessly day and night all year long to make sure that they have amazing eggs that eventually get to our grocery stores that we bring home. So for this type of a scramble, whisking at this point, we really want to make sure we're using just good fresh eggs. Although if you've got eggs that have been in your fridge for a week or two, those are fine too. I always say that if we are making a dish like a poached egg, you want the freshest possible. Hard-boiled eggs for egg salad, you actually don't want fresh. You want ones that have been hanging in the fridge for a week or two because the little air pocket at the top expands as the eggs age in the fridge, and it makes a hard-boiled egg a little easier to peel. So just some little eggy tips along the way you will get from me as I slosh a little bit on my counter. Okay, so what do we have happening here? We've got our 10 large eggs in the bowl. To that, let me grab some salt and pepper. We want to add a pinch of salt and a pinch of pepper, and we want to add a 1/4 cup of milk. So that's only 4 tablespoons of milk. We're not overdoing the milk department because we want it to stretch. Again, bites on a budget, but we don't want it to be so watery, even though it's milk. We don't want there to be too much liquid that it has a tough time pulling itself together. Pull it together. So just a pinch of pepper, just a pinch of salt, a pinch, if you were measuring, we're looking at about 1/8 of a teaspoon. You don't need too much. This is an awesome opportunity if you wanted to add in a lot more seasonings. Maybe you're a house that has seasoning blends, go for it. We want you to have fun with this. Now, I say fun, here comes the fun part. So we've got our ovens preheating to 375. I've got my parchment lined baking sheet, and this is magic. Are you ready? We are literally pouring the eggs down onto the baking sheet. It's kind of wild, right? And what's going to happen is that's going to bake, but we need to put some toppings on this. Now, if it spreads out to the corners, perfect. If your parchment is sort of tipped up a little bit, it might choose to be on a bit of an angle, and that's okay too. We're not fussy. This is the thing about Cook with Meg. We want you to embrace cooking. We want you to embrace, not necessarily, we don't call them mistakes, detours. If things kind of go a little sideways, no big deal. The goal here is just to learn the skills and the techniques and to get that kitchen confidence. And now this is where everyone can have some fun with the fillings. So I have a number of little toppings, and my family is a fan of all of them. So I've got some peppers, some just finely chopped up red, yellow, orange peppers. I'm gonna just scatter. But maybe you're a family that has very specific tastes, and maybe you want to do a combination where you get that side and I'll get this side, and your onions are not touching my peppers. And you can certainly do that. But again, if you're a family that enjoys all flavors, mix it all in. We're just scattering. I've got some green onion. I've got some cooked bacon. I'm gonna take some bacon and I'm gonna scatter that all down over the eggs. I mean, yes, please. This is cooked bacon. If you're using sausage, you want cooked, crumbled pieces of sausage. This is an amazing way to use up leftovers. So if you've got leftover chicken maybe that you made for dinner, if you had leftover ground beef even, use what you have. If you are feeling like bacon or sausage might not be in the budget, I get it. I only buy it when it's on sale. What about black beans? Black beans are an unbelievable source of protein, and it would give your burritos almost that Tex-Mex feel. So now Oliver is moving into position. I've got a cup of shredded cheese, and then we're gonna finish this by topping it with that shredded cheese. I also wanted to give you a little kitchen cooking tip that if you have Parmesan cheese, but you didn't necessarily want to put a ton of cheese into or onto your eggs, Parmesan cheese, while it is a little pricier initially, a little bit goes a really long way. And that's kind of my feeling when I am looking at my budget and deciding what it is that I want to make that comes in at a certain price. I always think, you know, if you can buy a bigger, like a block of cheese and shred it yourself, you are definitely getting not only a fresher product, but you are saving the money because you sometimes pay for convenience when things are already shredded. So Parmesan cheese, a little goes a long way in the flavor department. So maybe you're not covering it with a whole cup, but you've got some Parmesan cheese and you want to put a couple tablespoons across the top. So what are we looking at? I always say, what's in our bowl? That's what we do at Cook with Meg. Let's take a peek. I have 10 eggs, a quarter cup of milk, quarter to a half a teaspoon of salt and pepper, like a pinch. And then I put on a cup of shredded cheese. I put about 8-ish strips of bacon, nicely cooked. And then I chopped up with kitchen scissors. I put 2 stalks of green onion, thinly sliced, and I used mini peppers, and I used 4 little mini peppers. And there is my delicious base. So now what we're going to do, our oven is set to 375. We are going to put this into the oven very carefully. Now the toppings sort of help secure the eggs in place, but it's still a little sloshy. We're going into the oven, and by we, I mean this, middle rack, and we're gonna bake it between 15 to 20 minutes. Now let me get it in and then we'll chat what I mean about approximate bake times. Hold on. I will clean as I talk. So when we talk about approximate bake times, it doesn't mean that the person who wrote the recipe, me, or anyone online, if you like recipes online, it doesn't mean that we don't know how long to cook something for. It just means that there is such a spectrum, if you will, a range for your oven. So ovens are all very different. You might have a convection oven and then it tells you to drop the temperature slightly and maybe not cook it as long. Your oven might be brand new, your oven might be gas versus electric. So you get that bake time, but we also want to give you kind of what to look for. And absolutely at Cook with Meg, we do that. So I will always say bake for 15 to 20 minutes or until the eggs are fully set and lightly golden on top. To which you might say, but how do I tell? Because there's so many toppings, will it be golden? Even if you've got the cheese, it should be set up. So we'll come back. When I take those out of the oven, it might be 15, it might be closer to 20. In your world, that might be 25, or it might be more on the 15. So just let it cook until you can put oven mitts on and sort of gently grip the sides of your sheet pan and give it a little jiggle. And if it doesn't have a shimmy shake, if it's not sloshing, if it looks pretty set up, you are good to go. If there is some squishiness and it looks like things are kind of still ooey gooey, leave it in the oven. I want to say you can't overcook it. You could overcook it, but I wouldn't go more than 20, 25 minutes. The other thing I'll tell you is that there is something called carryover cooking, which means even after we pull it out of the oven, it's still gonna cook for a couple minutes. And that's a very, very thin layer of egg. So it shouldn't take too long. I'll meet you back here when I've got my egg on a pan out of the oven. And then we'll burrito-fry them. See you soon. We are back. Look at this. This is glorious. Now I put 2 pieces of parchment and I see that a little bit kind of went underneath, but don't worry about it. We're happy with this. We are thrilled with this. We do need to let this cool for, you know, a few minutes before we lift it off the sheet pan. So we're gonna let it cool. The puff will go down slightly. Then we're gonna move it to a cutting board and we're gonna cut it into as many pieces as you wish. I have 8 burrito tortilla shells. So I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares or rectangles. If you wanna do English muffins, you could probably get even more out of this. And if you wanted to do strips, you could do strips, but I'm gonna cut it into 8 pieces. I am gonna let it, I always say I'm gonna let things cool, but then I move right on over. Yeah, we'll let it cool for a minute or two. When I come back, it will be out of said baking pan and onto a cutting board in order for us to cut it into pieces. Meet you back here in just a few minutes. Give it like 5 minutes. We're back. All right, I have a pizza cutter. I feel like pizza cutter is the easiest way to go. It is currently sitting on a cutting board. I lifted it out of the parchment, out of the baking sheet, and I am literally cutting 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I will cut down the center. However, I wanna let you know that if you really feel like you want smaller pieces, you absolutely can do smaller pieces. So you let it cool until you can peel it off the parchment. I'm just gonna work on cutting and peeling and placing them onto a plate, and then we will begin to assemble our burritos. So we'll keep moving here, let it cool. I sometimes handle things when it's still really, really, really hot. So give yourself a chance to properly let it cool. But I'll meet you back here when I've got 8 pieces ready to make into burritos. We are back. We have assembled, I always like to call this stations. If you are on the directions, we just did step 7. We cut our eggy mixture into 8 rectangles. Again, if you want to do more, please feel free to do more. We have our flour tortillas, and what we're going to do is we're going to place one by one a rectangle into our flour tortilla, and then we are going to fold it up just like you would a little burrito. Now these look like this. So they're thin, they're not thick. If you wanted to make them thick, I'll show you how to do that. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna place them seam side down onto a parchment lined baking sheet. Reaching for a piece. If you wanted to double up, you would simply fold it and make like a bigger, thicker version. Some people like a bit of a thicker burrito, that works too. They make little pockets. There we go, gorgeous. And we're going seam side down. So we'll keep working through all of these. Now, I've been asked before, I'll do this one. I think I'm gonna do them all double fold. So I've sort of double folded the rectangle. If you think about it, we're actually getting for 10 eggs and 8, you're getting about 1 to 1 and a bit of egg per, plus bacon, plus cheese, plus veggies. So you're getting a nice little amount of food. Can you add cheese inside this? 100% yes. Could you add a dollop of salsa? Yes, I do a dollop of salsa maybe right in the center, and then I would kind of fold it over. How you fold a burrito is normally you fold from your, I say from your tummy, fold one end up, fold the other end up, and then you tuck the sides in, and tuck the sides in. So it's like a little package, and then you want to go seam side down. Now, these would be considered single, but let's say you really wanted to do a big protein boost, so you wanted to do a double. Well, there's nothing telling you can't break one of these rectangles in half. You could absolutely do a double. You could make them as little or as big as or as packed as you want. Now, what I like to do is bake these, and I put a little bit of non-stick spray or a little bit of oil, brush a little bit of oil on them, and that's what I'm going to be doing here in just a moment. I'll double these up. Depending on who you're feeding. If you're feeding a crowd and in your family you've got some hungry eaters, then double them up. Eggs are such a great economical and affordable choice for protein. Again, we mentioned black beans. Black beans would be an amazing way that you could really boost that protein. You could put salsa in these. You could take them in many different directions. They could be Tex-Mex. They could be Italian. You could put basil in them. You could really, the sky's the limit for combinations of cheeses and flavors. I'm gonna make those all fit. I think I'm gonna take this first guy out and double him up, fold him over, make him a little more compact. And then what I do is I've got my oven to 375. I will put these back in the oven in their tortilla, and that allows the tortilla to not be raw. I mean, it's edible, but I always feel like a burrito needs to have a little bit of crunch and a little bit of cook to it. So here's what I will do. Let's move all of this out of the way. There's my baking sheet. There are my pre-made burritos that we've done by hand. I have a squeeze bottle with some oil. And what I like to do is just give each one a squeeze or two. And I have a pastry brush, and I'm just gonna give them a little brush on top. Is it making them greasy? Nope. But it is going to kind of make them a little bit crispy, and then I turn it over, and whatever residual oil is on my brush, I brush the backside. Set back down on the parchment, and then I'm gonna go back into, maybe we do a squeeze onto the brush. We're gonna go back into a preheated 375-degree oven, and we're gonna bake these for about 10 minutes. And that's just enough to make our tortilla a little bit toasty. It sort of seals the seam side down. I often will spray a little in my hand and just sort of rub the burrito, give it a little massage. But again, you decide how you want these to go into the oven. I like getting them kind of prepped. Plus I got a little hand massage with my oil, a little spa service. So yes, back into a 375-degree oven. I would say 10 to 12 minutes until the tortillas are a little golden and they're a little crispy to the touch. Now, I would serve these warm, straight out of the oven. I might put a little dish of salsa. Maybe it's a little salsa, a little sour cream, some slices of avocado. It's whatever you want, but if you don't want to eat all 8, I would then let them cool and then individually wrap them and get them into the fridge or freezer for meal prep. So then you are literally ready to go. I'm gonna put these in the oven, and the next shot you will see will be the golden burritos all finished. I wanna say super, super big thanks to the Egg Farmers of New Brunswick. This has been our Bites on a Budget series, the very first video. We wanna set you up for success and let you know that you can feed a family and then some by not breaking the bank. So for more with me, cookwithmeg.com, and we will see you in the kitchen very soon with the next video. Take care, everyone. Remember, we are awesome.